Although the silencing of the songs of the people of God is not without precedent, see Psalm 137, verse 4, many were particularly dismayed that the coronavirus appeared to have succeeded in doing what neither two world wars nor any systematic persecutions had ever been able to accomplish. The imposition of a strict lockdown, which closed all places of worship, has caused people to feel effectively sentenced to a form of house arrest and forced them into a spiritual exile, which has produced a real crisis of faith. Where, they ask, is God in all of this? What future is there for the church? Where is our hope? As I wrestled with such questions, my mind took me back to when I had to study Albert Camus' novel La Peste, which is currently experiencing a boom in sales. The book tells the story of how a devastating plague, spread by rats, swept with alarming speed through the French-Algerian city of Oran. Oran had indeed suffered from several outbreaks of the plague in the past, but Camus' novel describes a fictional epidemic, during which Oran was forced into lockdown as the city gates were closed to prevent the spread of infection. When its trapped citizens struggled to make sense of their plight, the city's hardline Jesuit priest, Father Paneloux, preached a sermon in which he argued that the plague was divine in origin and punitive in purpose. Critical times inevitably pose challenges to the community of faith, but they also tend to produce inept and inappropriate theological responses, as the fictional Father Paneloux began to realize all too late when he was struck by the death of a child from the plague. This forced him to modify his opinions, which he then expressed in a second sermon. But days later, he himself fell ill with unusual symptoms and later died. Believing that the coronavirus is neither divine in origin nor punitive in purpose, and rejecting Camus' existentialist philosophy that life is ultimately meaningless and absurd, I've sought to make a more appropriate theological, pastoral, and spiritual response to the pandemic, which has posed such a powerful challenge to the community of faith. My hymn begins with an acknowledgement of the observation made by the Reverend Dr. Fergus MacDonald in a pastoral message to the Free Church of Scotland on the 23rd of March 2020, that the current global crisis has brought us to our knees. I've chosen to interpret that observation as a deliberate double entendre. Firstly, it recognises the paralysing effect of the virus upon society. But secondly, the expression is a powerful metaphor of how we are driven to our knees in prayer in order to appeal for God's help to ensure that the battle against a sinister and invisible enemy can eventually be won. Our prime concern in such prayer is therefore for all who are directly or indirectly affected by illness and disease, and for those who are becoming increasingly anxious as they search for answers but find none. Perhaps at such times, however, it's more important to be asking the right questions. The second verse of the hymn has correctly anticipated the continuing and deepening sense of desperation as the virus has appeared to be able to spread unchecked and unhindered, a fact which has impacted strongly on our mental and spiritual health and our growing sense of impatience as the lockdown has proved to be more prolonged than anyone would either have wished or even anticipated. It's been claimed that the best defence against coronavirus is your front door. But that's not strictly true. No home can be hermetically sealed against the source of infection. The sinister and invisible enemy can still get through doors, particularly through the keyhole or the letterbox, but it's not the only thing that can do so. Think of how the fourth Gospel records that the disciples of Jesus were in lockdown on the evening of the first Easter day, feeling fearful, disappointed, deflated, defeated, disillusioned and demoralized by the things that had recently taken place. They felt unwilling or unable to face society ever again. However, things took an unexpected turn. The locked doors proved to be no barrier to the risen and living Christ, who met the disciples where they were and offered them his comfort and his peace, thereby renewing their courage and releasing them from their doubts and fears. And the conviction that he can do the same for us will enable us to face the future with greater confidence and faith.